Okay, I just thought I'd just do a quick video just to show you what I've done with this file and some bit of experimenting I've done lately. Um, just first thing to mention is how powerful this, as some of you may not realise, is this is designed so you can use it live, either during a render or once a render has been completed. So basically, once a render is completed, you can obviously change these parameters. Like change that to 1. Obviously, as you can appreciate, with the mention in the gamma 2.2, the materials aren't going to look correctly. As you can see, how much darker it is, how much is in shadow. I mean, some of you might prefer that, but personally, and from my, the way I and the way other render engines work, they are based on the 2.2 principle. This is obviously not going to be 100%. Some mention you can go down 1.8. It's all personal taste, obviously. It's reducing it down. It doesn't look wrong. I quite like the 2.2, and obviously with lowering all the materials to 0.4545, this is the true accuracy for colours. If you put the tiles alongside there to within reason, obviously once you add in reflectivity, it's going to have a change on the material, but the base of it that it's working off is correct. So like I say, these are all factors you can play around with. Neutral, as you can see, look how much different neutral looks with this particular setup. Crushed everything down. Clearly it's trying to find, strictly speaking, certainly clamp anyway, is designed to find the whitest pixel. This is a little colour pick, that tool that I use, so it picks up the RGB values under through, try and get an average points. It's picking up this little square within the under the mouse cursor. Clearly there's a bright white pixel in there somewhere. Can't actually see it, but it's there somewhere. So clearly there is one somewhere, but I can't find it. It's either that or it's finding the whitest pixel if it's not pure 255 RGB or 254. Lowering them down, there's a little bright one there. But anyway, like I say, when you go neutral and clamp, it's not that much difference as I can see when you're comparing them. Obviously a clear difference when we go photographic, which does change things to more pleasing to the eye, and these burn factor of 60, actually I've changed this because in the as you can see here, look, I've upped the quality of the calculation, increased the GI values to get rid of a lot of that noise and the strange blockiness around the rim of this bath office, picking up the reflection off the floor, the black floor. This is a reflection of a reflection of a reflection. I think this is a mirror. I'm not fully, to be honest, I've not fully studied the scene. I just quickly set up the materials, just reset the camera view slightly just to pull it out a little bit more, more of a camera angle there, get more in the scene. Obviously here I've not got as much as a wall in the previous one, but if I just bring up the previous render, bring it up in the program that I use, Snagit, to but as you can see, I mean, like you say, quality is slightly down, the light is more or less the same. For a lot of people, you know, the extra render time, maybe not worth it, but as you can see, it's slightly better. Under there, it's more defined. Actually, I'm looking. I brought the wrong thing up. Actually, I have to grab that. That's not the correct one. This one is, I think. No, that's not this one. This is the one. Thought my eyes were deceiving me. I thought, oh, I knew it wasn't as good as that. But yeah, this is it. It's a slightly smaller window, not when I was testing. So there you can see a bit more broken up. It's clearly a lot clearer on the new one. There's a little bit of error under that window there. These little things, but I'm always a little bit more cloudiness around the window frame, which is often an area, and I think that fold in that corner could be that it's slightly bigger, but it's a little bit more defined. This is certainly more defined, and that certainly is, as you appreciate the higher quality render, certainly the GI, it's certainly picking that up a bit more and cleaning that up. So I initially thought it was an error, but there's also a little bit of geometry errors possibly in there, just in a bit of smoothing, which you're naturally going to get, but it's still very good geometry there. So like I say, and what I did, like I say, calibrated the materials, just going to the render style. So this is a saved preview, as you can imagine. Increased I had it 16 I think on the previous render, increased the light samples to 64, because obviously I'm using, the only lighting in that is a very low skylight, and actually it's actually taken from an LDR, or a low resolution blurry grayscale image of the this background that I've used. This used in the RSE as well. And increasing the sample rate, I'm going back to the burn factors and exposure. Got the colours more accurate, obviously using this colour pick tool, you see. If I go under the white is the hardest one to get close with the photographic tone mapping, but within 2 I'm happy with that. There, 201, look. These are the grayscale ones, 160 as we go down, 120, 121, 85, 52, obviously increasing the, like I said, point value, so we are actually picking up an average colour here. You see there, look, 70, reds. It was a problem actually in the lower. That's why in the lower one I was slightly different with these percentages. Exposure 0.4, I think it was 4.23, and that was 62.4 or something. The yellow was quite a way out. Obviously you're never going to be 100% because there's so many factors. I mean, this material is completely diffused, there's no reflection obviously. If there was, it would be picking that up and we wouldn't get true readings. Obviously as you go further back you can't expect them to be as accurate, but some of them aren't so bad. You can see, look, it's a bit noisy as it goes further back. Quite within you know, tolerance enough for accurately looking at materials. Obviously for previewing materials it's possibly a bit overkill. Reduce this down to 16 again, and down to 4 for your glossy sample rate. I think I did have to have the anti-aliasing rate, which is obviously just outside this preview window. I don't want to reduce that down and have it re-render. But the anti-aliasing I had at 8 or 16 I think in the previous one, to enable to clean up a bit more noise. As we increase the light samples, strictly speaking, we can reduce the anti-aliasing. Certainly 3 or 4 is what Redway sort of mentioned in their docs and things is good enough for most things. And then in the GI, from the previous render, the estimator at 1000 and just 3 passes, like cache passes. So yeah, so I've now increased that to 5 and 2000 to improve the get rid of some of them artifacts. Yes, you could put it, which is just off screen, put it onto brute force and estimator, but that's quite a bit of render time and sometimes not really necessary. So yeah, and the tone mapping, photographic part, like you see, it's exactly 60 and 40 on the exposure, which is quite good. And I'll just come out of it. Well, yes, I'll just come out to that and talk about the auto key. This is what I found out recently, just doing this experiment. I find that, personally speaking, that I personally don't like it when the render engine reduces. Obviously, it's fine what it's doing. It's finding the whitest pixel and then scaling everything back. It's sort of crushing highlights personally. So I quite like that extra glow without it that it gives. So yeah, I've applied now. You could put a curve on there to increase contrast, but accuracy of colours. I mean, save me curves here. Like I say, the S curve, which is often spoke about, will increase contrast. Just put that in there. It's not just creating more bloom really with auto key on, but I don't think it's improved it really. So just take it back to the default. Make sure you clear all that out. So we've got an actual curve factor when you go into the render style that you can play around with curves, but obviously for this scenario, because we've already done the gamma, strictly speaking, physically correct, this should be correct for most scenes. Like I say, nothing set in stone. You could play about with this if you wanted to, lowering the burn factor if you just wanted to take a bit of the bloom off. You can reduce the key. That does the same thing more or less. So like I say, this is the beauty of RedSDK, in that you can do this your heart's content until you're happy with it. So 0.9, you know, you might think that looks just took a bit of the bloom off, we're still leaving a little bit. So obviously you can go higher, you start really, but that's the beauty of having this live tone mapping, which in the newer version we're going to have a lot more. We can sharpen the image, although, you know, with this quality no sharpness needed. We've got bloom, blurring effects, depth of field effects. So, you know, the improving on this to reduce any further editing outside of the render. Obviously, once you're happy with this, what I usually do is render really a smaller window than this, but the same aspect. I'm potentially going to be printing out to save at. Obviously, you want to keep the same aspect, because if you don't, it affects your tone mapping. Because once you're happy with this, which more often than not now, is good. It's going to be good for each view, I would have thought. I mean, sometimes the changing to another view with a window out of view, the burn factor often needs to be reduced. So if you do a little preview and then do a save as, usually save as a PNG. Obviously, once you do a save as, it will pick up your render style changes as long as you've got the same aspect ratio. The tone mapping is going to be the same in your saved render as well. Just something to. That's normally how I work. I never really render to this size within TurboCAD itself. I always save out the render. But obviously, some of you know, you could screen grab this if you want. You know, just do a print screen, or if you've got the software to grab the image, that's another way of doing it. So you're not doing two things. Sometimes I'm in a small window, it can be hard to pick up. So, like I say, it's all personal preference. That's just the way I work. So yeah, just going to the materials are just going this way. Some of them I've rendered at this higher resolution and higher render setting. You don't always need to do it, just to gauge your material for the scene. Some of them I have. Find one that I've rendered the new there, look. So you can see there, look nice, picking up reflection off the background, clear, nice and see. I mean, strictly speaking, I've quite probably my IORs with it high, but it's more pleasing to the eye. If you reduce the IOR value, you'll get less head-on. Yeah, that's one thing to Fresnel, and the way it seems to work in RedSDK. You need to play around with the IOR setting to change your face reflection here, and obviously all the reflections, because the higher we go with this number, basically we're reducing the Fresnel effect. So Fresnel effect is sort of, strictly speaking, when it's 1.5 or 1.45, it's about 5% reflection in the middle, full reflection on the edges. Obviously, if we increase this, we get more head-on reflection, which some instances is not physically correct, but more pleasing to the eye. It's your own judgment, really. So it's just the way RedSDK does it. In other render engines, certainly things like Blender, you watch some tutorials with Andrew Price. He did a set up a node material, and he was able to have factors to change the grey values of this front bit and the side bit, so it gave the user control. He kept the IOR at 1.45 built. He was able to change the reflectance of the head-on and the edge using a slider factor to make it more user-friendly. Our only option when we're using Fresnel, is to use increasing this to get more head-on reflection, to get it to how you want it to look. I mean, this is a nice glossy wood material. Important really with materials is to use your bumps. I've added for this sample scene, I have added the bump map, basically just picking up the same texture as what's used here, but not the gamma one, obviously. So it's which one is it? It's one down. This where are we on? 25. So yeah, you can see it look gamma down there. I mean, you look at that and think it's black. There's still all the information there. It's still all there. But yeah, use the normal one. I always keep that so you've got a reference. for when you're previewing it within the render manager, getting the hue the same. As you can appreciate, this is quite reflective. You could probably reduce the reflection in this, but when you start applying the reflections, you can appreciate it's going to change the colour because it's picking up the reflections, admittedly. But when you're using Gamma 2.2, you need to reduce them, and you'd naturally think, well, how is the this black material, how's that going to look? You think when you're lowering the gamma with that, I've actually already opened this and already played around. Started recording this video before and ran out of disk space, so hopefully this one works. But that's it, gamma down to 2.2. Think, well, there's no information there, it's gone. It's still there, as you can see, there's still that pixel there along with some of the others, but as soon as I not do the redo, but as soon as I adjust the levels again of the gamma to 2.2, it brings it all back. So you'd think, well, yeah, but surely it's not the same as the original, but there's very little difference, as you can see there. Slightly lower on the, so that's the gamma one, that's the original. So it does show you, blacks, you're always it's gonna stay black. But obviously when gamma is applied to it, as you can see there's still some noughts in there, because it seems like you can't, I think you can gamma up black, but you can't gamma down white at 255. It won't do it, you've got to go down to 254, sorry. But that's enough about that. So yeah, so always keep the original, so you always, you like to say, you don't always have to use 2.2, but you're trying to reduce your light and give a more natural, how you'd visually see it with your eyes, and more pleasing to a potential client. This is a good way of minimising adding extra lighting. Like I say, the only lighting is this is a very dim skylight. That's quite nice. You see that's rendered down, that's the mirror, that's this material here. So I think that's picking up nicely the background. Nice material. Obviously when you're in the material editor, don't worry about these colours now, because these aren't going to be accurate, because it's picking up and the photographic tone mapping is not being affected by that. So don't worry about that. This is what happens with cameras. So it's just something to work to, but it just gives you a good base, I think, what it does for me anyway, to work out the materials and how they're going to look in the scene. Loads of different setups you could have for setting up materials. I just did this quickly. I thought, well, I'll just have the same, basically it's the same scene, same render settings as the scene settings, so just did it quickly just to get a gauge. Like I say, some of the materials aren't there from the previous testing that I was doing, but it just gives you a good idea. Clearly, in the material editor, you don't want to wait for that to finish off. Some of you might, because obviously it saves these nice previews. Certainly it does give you satisfaction when you see the quality of that render, and picking up the nice reflections around it and its surroundings. You're working from an accurate colour base. That when gamma 2.2 is applied, your colours are going to be correct, because that's what your image editor does, and that's what a lot of other rendering engines, like I say, V-Ray, are set up this way by default. Apparently, for most users, even for exterior scenes, they use this setup. You know, there's other ways to get your shadows if you think it's not enough contrast. You can use the curve values to change that. So, like I say, it's all personal preference, just the way. I'm just starting to work now, just as you get your head around things a bit more. So yeah, so like I say, I hope that helps. Like I say, anything else? Like I say, I think I've covered majority of things. One thing it's because I've already, like I say, tried to do this video. Let's talk about glossiness. And in 2016, things changed in 2017, just about the glossiness values, just in the render manager. For the material preview, I actually zeroed, because obviously in here you can specify which advanced render engine you want to do. I don't know why that sometimes resets. I have to check why that does that, but basically I've got one called material preview, and basically that's got a glossy sample rate of 0, because obviously, like that mirror, you don't really need, probably just put one value in, value of 1 in, for the glossy sample rate, because it doesn't need a high value, because it does, this is for to do with your matte materials that's the reflections are blurred out, and it's got micro ridges, micro finish to the surface, to create the noise within the material. More noise there is, the higher the glossy value needs to be. So like for the likes of the wall, say, so this was rendered with 64 times, and the reflectance sample count is 8. Did this at 1, it would be more noisy. Glossiness of 0.2. I try not to go above that. The majority of the materials, reflectance is down. And what I recently sort of found out, and I think it works, is really the higher we go generally with the glossiness, the less IOR, or the less Fresnel effect we need. Like I said, with the Fresnel effect, from 1 and above, between 1 and 1.5, you'll notice, I think with 1, there's no head-on reflection and very little side, as I recall. Obviously, the higher we go with the IOR value, with the way RedSDK works, the less Fresnel effect. So you have to start lowering your reflectance down. To avoid going too low, because sometimes it can look a bit harder on, like it looks inverted. You get a slight inverted, strange lens effect in some instances. So obviously the higher we've got the glossiness, or the more glossiness or roughness, the more sample count we generally need, and the less Fresnel effect. So going higher with this number is going towards metal, with no Fresnel effect. So whether you look at it here, it's got full reflection here, full reflection here. So like I say, it's personal taste, but it just gives you a bit of idea of the way I've come to think about the IOR values and the glossiness. Certainly in Blender, Andrew Price mentions this. I mean, in there he can leave the IOR at 1.45, I think it was, and he's got another factor that within the Fresnel shader he can change the grayscale. So obviously on the edges it's whiter or it's darker, I can't remember which way around it is, and we can change it that way with RedSDK. We only have this value to play with, to play around with that. I mean, for metal generally I turn that off. Obviously for some things like lacquered metals, strictly speaking, you want to turn the Fresnel effect on, because the lacquer will take on Fresnel effect, and some aluminiums, but these generally be quite high values. I mean, some aluminiums, I suppose, can look more plasticky, so it's personal taste. Hopefully that gives you a bit of a background to what I've been experimenting with, and a bit of ideas about what the render engine does. Certainly within 2017, individual sampling is not necessary anymore. I mean, I did an experiment with a mirror, and whether it was 8 or 1 within the render manager, it didn't affect the render time. So certainly the render style sort of takes over. So this is done globally within the render engine in TurboCAD 2017. So obviously it realizes when it sees a gloss material, it doesn't need to sample that as much. Just one sample thrown at it, it's going to bounce off in one direction. When it gets more glossy, it's going to be bouncing off in various directions. That's the way I see it anyway. So hopefully that's give you a bit of insight. So like I say, it's all about materials, lighting, and the engine settings. So thanks for watching.